Have you ever wondered what would happen if you died but didn't disappear? What if instead of fading into nothing, you were pulled out of your body and shown the very reason for every ounce of pain you ever carried? What if you were taken on a journey through your own life, moment by moment, even the ones you thought you had long forgotten, and asked a single question: then what did you live for? I didn't believe that question. Not on the night I decided to leave this world, not during that breath-stealing winter evening when I wrote a final note, sent my 2 children to the neighbor's house, and laid down, ready to vanish forever. I wasn't waiting for the light. I only hoped for silence, a clean, quiet end. But instead, I heard a sound, a piercing vibration that seemed to rip straight through my chest and into space, like someone was crushing the part of me I had hidden for years. And then I began to leave my body. There were no tears, no thunder, just the sensation of slipping, as if I were being lifted out of everything I once believed was me. I opened my eyes and saw that the room was pitch black, but it wasn't the kind of darkness you get when you switch off the lights. It was a darkness that could think, that could whisper, that could echo back the words I had once said to myself. "You're a burden. You don't deserve to exist." And the darkness nodded. You think you're ready to die until you begin to see what comes after, and then you realize death is not the end. It's the beginning of the most profound reckoning you will ever face. And at the end of that reckoning, I was shown a vision of the future, not just my own, but of this world. And there was one scene so overwhelming it made me want to come back, a glimpse of what's to come, where children no longer remember who they are. Why was I shown that? And what did it have to do with the choice I was about to make in that moment? My name is Grace Harper, and for a long time I thought my name was some kind of cruel cosmic joke. Grace, a word that means blessing, gentleness, unearned favor. But nothing about my childhood ever reflected that. My mother left when I was 8, carrying a small suitcase and leaving a note on the refrigerator that read, "I'm sorry, I need to live for me." As for my father, he didn't leave physically, but he withdrew from my life in silence, a silence thick as stone. He drank too much, slept too much, and not once did he ask, "How was your day?"
I don't blame him. I truly don't. I think he was just a little boy in a grown man's body, crushed too early by life. But when you grow up in a house where no one sees you, where no one touches your sadness, you learn to be quiet. You learn to disappear. And you carry that invisibility into every relationship that follows. I was a good student, a polite daughter. I smiled on cue. I loved people like love was an admission ticket, not a birthright. At 25, I got married. Not out of passion, but out of a sense of safe enough. He was a good man, truly good. But deep down, I was still that little girl sitting on the stairs, listening to the sound of my father smashing a bottle in the kitchen, hoping my mother would walk back through the door. I never truly believed I was worthy of love. So when we had 2 children, I poured every ounce of myself into becoming the perfect mother. I woke up early. I cooked clean meals. I read every book on child brain development. But no one had taught me how to love myself. And slowly the emptiness inside me became something no amount of well-structured schedules could fill. I began to feel tired. Then came the depression. Then I fell. At first it was just tears while doing the dishes. Then it was panic attacks in the middle of the night, my heart pounding like a war drum, and no one knew why. I went to the doctor. They gave me medication. I took it. I pretended to be okay. I smiled during yoga class. I told my friends I'm fine. But inside I started hearing a whisper. If you disappeared, no one would notice. I used to have dreams. Small ones. I once wanted to study painting. I used to doodle on the corners of my notebooks. Sunlit rooms, eyes that could speak. I used to believe there was something special about me. But time has a way of erasing both the special thing and the person who believed in it. I tucked that dream away in a drawer the way my mother once stored her suitcase in the attic. I chose to live a safe life, and the cost of safe was that I no longer felt anything at all. Have you ever felt like you were living as a ghost in your own life? Still working, still getting dressed, still attending parent-teacher conferences, but not existing on any real emotional level. Just a shell, moving through the motions of a day. That was me.
Until one morning, I opened my eyes, looked around my tidy little house, and realized I no longer knew why I was still here. I didn't see a way forward, but I didn't see a way back either. Just a long, cold silence stretching out in every direction. I didn't leave a suicide note. I didn't blame anyone. I simply left a short message. I'm not well. The kids are with Aunt Nancy. That was the last kind thing I knew how to do. Then I lay down and shut off. I thought I was ending something meaningless, but what I didn't know was that the moment I thought I had disappeared was the very moment I began to fully exist. And you wouldn't believe the first thing I saw after leaving my body wasn't light, wasn't heaven. It was me, from the outside. And in that single glance, a terrifying truth began to surface. I had never truly known who I was. I think if someone had looked at me back then, a 32-year-old woman with a tidy home, 2 healthy kids, a husband with a steady job, and vegetables on the dinner plate, they wouldn't have seen anything wrong. I was the kind of person people often said to, "You're so lucky." But no one knew that I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow, like a freshly painted house with cracks running deep through its foundation. That emptiness didn't show up all at once. It crept in. It was like a glass with a hairline crack at the bottom, slowly leaking out emotion, hope, energy, until there was nothing left to pour. At first, I blamed work. Then, sleep deprivation. Then, hormones. Then I stopped blaming anything because I was too tired. And because a part of me began to believe maybe I was born wrong. Maybe I just wasn't made to feel whole. I started having long nights of insomnia, not because my mind was racing, but because it felt like my mind was an open window in a snowstorm. Cold winds are rushing in, no protection. I'd lie there in the dark, listening to the ticking clock like it was counting down the seconds until I vanished. Day after day, I performed every role: mother, wife, employee, friend, but none of them were truly me. I tried praying once, softly, not out loud, just a silent question. If someone's out there, am I still loved? There was no answer, just the gentle hum of the dishwasher and the quiet thud of my heart skipping another beat. Then I started having strange visions. I saw myself driving straight into a row of trees, standing alone by the lake for hours, swimming out into deep water without turning back. They weren't vivid, not detailed, just flickers, like ink spreading through water, not clear, but familiar. I didn't want to die. Not really. I just wanted everything to stop, just for a little while. So I didn't have to hold it all together anymore. So I could finally breathe. I once told my husband that I felt invisible. He looked at me, hesitated, and said, "You just need some rest." But how do you rest from yourself? How do you ask for a break from being a mother, a wife, an adult, just to be weak for a while, to cry, to say, "I'm not okay"? How do you admit, "I'm slipping away and no one notices"? One night, after the kids had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room with the lights off, watching the street lights spill through the curtain. It was so quiet I could hear my breathing, and in that stillness, I heard a voice I knew all too well. "What are you still doing here?" That voice didn't come from outside. It came from deep within my chest, from that place where we hide the things we're afraid to say out loud. It whispered the same lines every day. "No one needs you. You're a burden. You're not enough. You'll never be enough." At first, I fought back. I tried to prove I mattered, but eventually I got tired. And when you stay tired long enough, you stop having the strength to argue with your sadness.
You start to believe it. You begin to see logic in hopelessness. Death no longer looks like an end. It starts to look like a choice, a softer one, a quieter one that takes less effort. I can't remember the exact moment I made the decision. There was no dramatic snap in my mind. It was just one morning I woke up, and I knew, today is the day. I looked at my kids sleeping, kissed their foreheads, and sent them to the neighbor's house with a simple message. Mommy's not feeling well. Aunt Nancy will watch you today. I locked the door, turned off my phone, closed the curtains. I lay down in a quiet, clean room that smelled like sun-dried linen. No drama, no blood. Just a tired woman who chose to stop trying. I closed my eyes and waited to fade away.
I tried to speak. No sound came out, but I could feel an echo vibrating through my thoughts, some kind of soundless sound. And then, that feeling arrived, the one thing no language can truly capture. It wasn't fear, it wasn't joy, it was knowing. I knew that a presence was approaching. Not through sight, not through sound, but through a deep sensing that soaked through every layer of my soul. A presence that needed no introduction. And as it drew near, I didn't hear a greeting, I didn't see a form, but a message poured into me like water rushing through a narrow crack in stone. You have arrived. I didn't ask, where am I? I no longer felt the need to ask, because I was experiencing something this world had never taught me. You don't have to understand to be safe. That safety didn't come from answers. It came from the sheer presence of love surrounding me in that moment. I began to sense layers of space shifting, almost like invisible curtains being gently pulled back. I didn't see a bright light, not yet, but I began to see memories. Not as scattered flashes, but all of it. Every feeling, every word spoken, every decision made. Every time I turned away from myself, every time I smiled because someone else needed it, not because I felt joy. They appeared not to accuse me, not to shame me, but simply to exist. And I realized I was being invited to witness myself for the first time, fully, with an unflinchingly honest gaze, but overflowing with love. I don't know how long I'd been out of my body, maybe just minutes. Maybe a moment that sat outside the laws of time. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't abandoned. I was being guided. And what I was about to see next wouldn't just change how I viewed myself. It would change how I understood love, how I understood life, and how every tiny, seemingly invisible choice I'd ever made carried a value far beyond anything I had ever imagined. I didn't walk, I didn't float, but I was drawn into another space, as if an invisible doorway had opened in the darkness and I slipped through without realizing it. There was no floor, no ceiling, no physical boundary of any kind, just a thick, enveloping space, dense but not suffocating. It felt like standing inside my mind, but a version of it where lying wasn't possible. And then I began to see. Not with my eyes, but with some strange form of vision, as if each memory transformed into a living image within that space. I wasn't simply watching my life flash before me, like people often say. I was in each of those moments again. I was reliving them, refeeling them. But this time, I didn't just experience my perspective, I felt the people around me too. I saw myself. At 8 years old, curled up beneath the table as my father shattered his first bottle. I saw clearly that his eyes weren't filled with rage, but helplessness. I saw my mother by the door, her hands trembling as she turned away. I felt my fear, but now I also felt my father's despair, my mother's heartbreak. I wasn't wrong for feeling abandoned, but I had never realized how much pain they were in too. I saw myself at 16, turning down the apology of a friend who had once hurt me. I remembered the words I said. I don't need fake people in my life. Back then, I thought I was being strong. But in that space, I could feel her heart breaking in two. I could feel the chill that began to grow inside me, the chill I would later call self-protection. I saw myself holding my children when they were small, the moments when I genuinely laughed with them. But I also saw the times I held them while my mind drifted, worrying about bills, about mistakes, about how I had lost pieces of myself. And I saw those little eyes looking up at me, longing for connection. The moments I had dismissed as exhaustion were, in truth, the very moments when my children needed me most. I saw everything, the things I'd forgotten, the things I'd tried so hard to forget. There was no one accusing me, no angry God standing over me. It was just me, face to face with a complete portrait of myself. And I realized, no action is ever truly small. A cold glance, a silence when someone needed a word, a moment I walked away when I could have stayed. Each one created ripples, and those ripples traveled far beyond what I ever imagined. There was one moment I'll never forget. I saw myself again, sitting alone in the bathroom. The water was running. My head was bowed, and I said quietly to myself, "You're worthless." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but in that space, it echoed like thunder. And in that instant, I felt my soul contract, like a flower freezing shut in the middle of spring. And then I saw something that made me weep. Every time I had repeated those words to myself, my soul closed just a little more, until one day, I no longer recognized who I was. But there were also moments of breathtaking beauty. I saw the time I took the hand of a stranger, an elderly woman at a bus stop, and asked if she needed help. I saw the note I left for a colleague battling depression. "I see you trying. I know that feeling." In that realm, those tiny acts became radiant bursts of light, like cracks in the dark earth where light could finally seep in. I began to cry, not from regret, but from a pure aching sadness. I never knew I mattered this much. I never realized that every choice, no matter how small or unseen, was remembered in a symphony far greater than myself. No one condemned me, but I couldn't help but ask from the deepest part of me, if I had known this sooner, would I have lived differently? And then that voice returned, not in words, but resonating clearly through every fiber of my awareness. Every soul is a link in the chain. No soul is ever lost. You've simply forgotten the sound of your calling. I was still. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. There was only one feeling rising steadily within me, a quiet, powerful longing. I wanted to go back, not to make amends, not to start over, but to live with this new awareness that I could be light, even if just a small flicker in someone else's life. But I couldn't return. Not yet. Because before I could go back, there was something I had to be shown. Something that hadn't happened yet. A glimpse of what could be if I didn't choose to return. A fragment of humanity's future. Unlike anything I had ever imagined. When the life review faded, I thought the journey was over. But it wasn't. Not even close. Everything around me suddenly shifted, not like a scene changing in a film, but as if I had been gently turned ever so slightly in space, and the entire universe changed orientation with me. Light began to emerge. Not a blinding external light like sunlight, but something gentler. It had no color, no form, no edges. It didn't shine onto me, it came from within me. As if I weren't walking into the light, I was becoming the light. And then the presence came closer. No shape, no face, but there was no mistaking who it was. Not some bearded man on the throne like in the pictures. Not male, not female,
Not a separate being at all, but a vast, infinite consciousness so immense you don't stand before it. You melt into it. There was no voice, but a message overflowing with compassion flooded into me. It was warmer than any embrace I had ever known. I have always been here. I didn't bow, I didn't kneel, because there was no me left to do either. I was dissolving layers of ego, peeling away like old paint washed off by rain. Every belief I had carried about being not enough, unworthy, a burden, a failure, dissolved without argument. There was no judgment, no sentence, only truth. And that truth was, I have always been loved.
I had always believed I needed to earn love, to strive, to sacrifice, to endure, to be perfect. But here, love wasn't a reward. It was the beginning, the foundation, the very air you breathe when all your defenses fall away. I didn't ask with words, but with the full weight of my soul. Why did I suffer so deeply? And the answer came not as an explanation, but as a gaze that embraced the entire question at once. Because you forgot who you are. I was silent. For the first time, I felt that everything in my life, even the mistakes, even the pain, even the moment I chose to leave, was held within an embrace that asked nothing in return. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the realization that I had never been blamed. A stream of images brushed against my awareness like waves, touching the shore and receding gently. The time I drew pictures as a child, the time I sang alone in my room, the time I held my child and my tears fell onto their hair. All of it was beautiful, even though I hadn't seen it then. He never said I had to go back, but I knew deep within, I was being chosen. I could stay in this light, in this place where pain and separation no longer existed, but I could also return, carrying this new awareness, and become a small drop of light in the ordinary world. I asked, if I return, what's waiting for me? Then the light shifted, not with coldness, not as a rejection, but as if opening a new lens for me to see through. I saw a door, and through that door, the future. Not just my own, but the future of those I love. The future of the world I had almost left behind. And within that vision was something that froze me in place. A truth that made it painfully clear my choice didn't only affect me. I was about to be shown. If I didn't return, a series of events would unfold. Not like a dramatic movie, much quieter. A child would grow up without a mother. A man would learn to close off his heart permanently. A little girl would one day believe that death is the only way out of pain. All because I wasn't there. The light receded, not to vanish, but to help me see more clearly. The space around me began to shift, as if invisible waves were opening doorways into parallel branches of time. I didn't need to walk forward, I only had to allow it. And when I nodded in silent consent, the first vision appeared.
I saw my daughter, 16 years old, sitting in her room hugging a pillow, staring out the window but not seen. The room was tidy, but inside her was a storm no one touched. I wasn't there. There were no mother-daughter talks about fear and growing up, no comforting arms, no knowing glance when she broke down. I watched her grow with a shapeless, nameless void that carved its way into how she would one day love herself. And then I saw her writing in a journal the same words I once wrote. Am I worth loving? I saw my husband, sitting in the car, his hand gripping the steering wheel long before he could bring himself to walk inside. His face was carved with a hardness, not from strength, but from having no other choice. He didn't break down. He just fell silent. Dinners became shorter, words became fewer. The children learned to live within a silence that no one acknowledged. He didn't collapse all at once, but slowly he retreated into a soft, shadowed place where people still function but no longer fully exist. I saw my son, so small, just 8 years old, trying to do everything right so his father wouldn't feel more pain. I saw him growing up with a quiet belief tucked deep inside: if I'm good enough, maybe mom won't leave again. I saw him become a man who never allowed himself to be vulnerable, a husband who always said he was fine, a father who never cried. And one night I saw him sitting alone in the living room, whispering the very thought I once had. Maybe I shouldn't stay either. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. I could only see, completely and without the ability to look away. I saw how even the smallest action, like a mother simply not being present, could create silent shockwaves across generations. It wasn't to blame, it wasn't punishment, it was just the truth. Then the vision expanded. It wasn't just my family anymore. I saw people I had crossed paths with, an elderly woman at the grocery store, her eyes heavy with sorrow, never once asked how she was doing. If I didn't return, I would never stop to speak with her, and she would pass through the remainder of her life with no one ever knowing what she needed. I saw a little girl at school, once isolated by her classmates. If I weren't there that day to stand beside her, she would stay silent forever and teach herself that injustice is just something to accept.
My existence was never small. I was a link, a tiny glimmer of light that, if missing, would throw the whole map of light slightly off course. I was a single note in a vast symphony. And yes, the music would go on without me, but there would be a long pause where my note should have been. And others might try to fill the silence, but they would never play it in the right rhythm. And then I saw one last vision, a world where people gradually forgot the voice of their hearts. Children are growing up without knowing how to touch their own emotions. Adults are glued to screens, forgetting how to hold each other. A world where silence didn't come from the absence of noise, but from the absence of feeling. And I heard the question again. This time it thundered. If no one reminds them that love is real, then who will? I understood. I wasn't being shown the future to scare me. I was being shown to awaken, to remember that I have a role, not because I'm more special than anyone else, but because I exist. I'm a link in the chain of healing. I'm a small spring in the desert, and if I don't flow, someone may thirst. If I don't stay, someone else might leave too. And I whispered, not begging, not bargaining, just a full-bodied answer from the deepest place in my soul. I want to go back. And the moment I spoke those words, something miraculous happened. My body, still and breathless in the living room, began to breathe again. But I didn't come back the same. I returned with something that could never be taken from me again, the awareness that I have never been invisible. I didn't wake up the way people usually describe it. There was no sudden gasp, no dramatic jolt like in the movies, no blinding light. No one is holding my hand. Everything was quiet, as if life itself was whispering, "Welcome back." No need for a grand entrance. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was a single dust particle suspended in the light streaming through the curtain. Just one speck, weightless. But I stared at it like it was a miracle, because for the first time I wasn't looking past it. I was looking into it. And in that particle I saw proof that I was still here. I breathed, not deeply, not urgently, just a simple, ordinary breath, but it felt entirely different, because this time I could feel it touch me, as if each inhale was a quiet declaration, I am alive. And this time, I'm here to truly live.
I moved my hand, gently. It was the same skin, the same familiar body, aching a little, weary in places, but this time I didn't resent it. I didn't want to abandon it. I wanted to stay inside it. I wanted to care for it, like an old friend who had been waiting for me all along. I turned my head. The room was just as I had left it. The worn sofa, the slightly wrinkled curtain, the scent of sun-dried fabric, and the soft dampness of time. Nothing was new, but nothing felt old, because the one seeing it had changed. I didn't leap up to do something grand. I didn't cry out or run into the sunlight. I just lay there, placed my hand over my heart, and felt it beat. No longer racing, no longer chaotic. Just steady. Just home. A little while later, I heard footsteps. It was my neighbor, Nancy, unlocking the door with the spare key. I saw her face appear in the light, first filled with worry, then disbelief, and finally, tears. I couldn't say much in that moment. I just reached out, took her hand, and whispered, "I'm still here." I didn't tell anyone right away what had happened, not because I wanted to keep it a secret, but because some truths need to be lived before they can be spoken. The next day, I went for a walk. Not far, just around the yard. I bent down and picked up a single yellow leaf that had fallen by the steps. I looked at it for a long time, and I felt a wave of gratitude rise so strong it nearly spilled from my eyes. Not gratitude for surviving, but for, maybe for the first time, seeing the sacred in even the smallest thing. I didn't come back to be a hero. I didn't return to change the world. I came back to remember that just being present, just showing up, living truthfully, that alone is enough to start changing the world around me. Do you remember how I said I was shown the future of humanity? I did see it, not to predict it, not to fear it, not to paint some apocalyptic vision, but to understand every small action we choose today, every time we stay when it would be easier to walk away, every moment we offer love despite the cracks inside us, that's what shapes the future. Every smile, every hug, every time you look someone in the eyes and say, "I'm here with you." These are seeds, and humanity is the garden we're all tending together. I used to think I was small, insignificant, replaceable.
But after dying, I learned the truth. There is no one like you. No one else can walk the path that is yours alone to walk. And if you're not here, someone will be left waiting, without the healing only you could bring. I'm not telling you this story to convince you to believe in NDEs or God or anything supernatural. I'm telling it because maybe, somewhere inside you, there's a part that feels like I once did, tired, lost, unsure if your existence matters. And if that's true, then please hear me. You have never been a burden. You are a beginner. Don't wait until you've left to recognize the worth of staying. Don't wait for light to surround you to realize that you are the light. And if there's only one thing you can believe today, let it be this. As long as you're still breathing, you can still be a miracle for yourself and this world. I came back, and I'm here to tell you it's not too late to come back to yourself.